All right, we are recording, Don. What are we talking about tonight?
All right, since everybody is pulling honey, and right now you're getting honey bound, queen cells, and trading. So everybody out there probably wants to know what's the cheapest way to do your honey. I don't pull mine once a year. I pull mine as soon as I get a frame cap, and I have found out you actually make more honey. I've got videos up on how to do honey on the cheap. I've had people posting about the honey plane, and I probably said it on that video that I done with the honey plane. I'm a strong guy, and it's hard for me to hold that thing up. And for a woman to hold that up and do 2 or 3 frames, my problem is it slid down and burnt the inside of my thumb. And I usually got a pretty good grip. So if they was to pay me what they're asking for, pay me that much to try it out again, I wouldn't do it. I got one in the back there that I bought, and I used it one time on 3 frames when I burnt myself, and that was the end of that. But you don't need to buy all that stuff out there to extract honey. You don't need the filters. Keep it as simple as possible. I done some honey here about 3 weeks ago, and I done about 6 frames, and I averaged about a quart per frame on a medium. And all I done was I held it up vertically over a strainer in one of my wife's pots, and I scraped it off. And then I let it drain out. I did about 2 frames, and then I just poured it into a quart jar and put a lid on it. I done 6.5 frames, and I got almost 7 quarts of honey. So it was a pretty good deal. And what I usually do on the extractor is I'll do supers of it. And I just run it into a 5-gallon or a 2-gallon pail and let it sit for 2 days. I never run it through a strainer. Let nature float it. Everything that's bee parts, wings, or bees, or wax, it'll float. Just take a large serving spoon and skim it off, and then put it in a bowl or in a container and let the bees clean it up. When I fill my jars up, I do the same thing. I fill them up, overfill them. You're supposed to fill them right to that ring there. I fill them to where I can take 2 teaspoons or more out. And then, because you're always going to get that white foamy looking stuff that goes through a filter in that. In 2 days more, it just floats to the top, and I take a teaspoon and just kind of skim it off. And that's how I do my honey. And if you're running it through a filter, the higher the micron, you're taking all the good stuff out, the pollen particles and everything else. Now, right now, you should be pulling honey out of the brood chamber. I've got a lot of people have been sending me emails, their queen's not laying. There's no place to lay. I haven't been feeding for probably 2.5 months, and I'm going through hives right now and pulling honey out of the brood chamber. If you use the honey out of the brood chamber, it's not going to hurt you. If you're not familiar, it's going to have cocoons in it. You just have to be careful when you cut the caps off, and if you let it sit or run it through a filter, there's nothing wrong with that honey. As far as queen cells, this is the time to be cutting those queen cells, or if you don't want to cut queen cells, make your splits. So those were the 3 things that I wanted to kind of hit on tonight, because I had a lot of people sending me emails on it, high tech. And all the stuff I do on my queens is trial and error where I made mistakes, and he has gone to a professional class up there, and he probably enlightened us some.
Well, we got Paul with the first question. Go ahead, Paul.
Don, if you take a brood frame and you want to extract the honey from it, will you kill the cap brood if you run it through an extractor?
Well, you're going to sling brood out, but I wouldn't do that. I'm referring to frames that's usually on the outside of your brood chamber. A lot of times you'll get each frame on the outside will be almost solid. And this time of the year, they're moving 2 frames in. And some of them are almost 3 frames in. So they're slowly, closing that queen off, or there's no place to lay. If you don't want to extract the honey, the next option, and I've done it out here on about 6 of my hives, I put another deep on top and I checkerboard it. And I use, with my checkerboard method, I use a full frame, and then next to it, I put a starter strip, 1.5 inch starter strip, because I want them to eat the honey up. I want them to draw wax and make more brood. So That's one option you can use.
If you cut the caps open on the honey, will they move that honey around? Or will they just recap it?
Sometimes they'll move it around and sometimes they don't. Remember, bees are like kids. They got a mind of their own. They do what they want to do.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Okay. Ernest, go ahead.
Yeah, Don, I've been trying to get them to make queen cells, and I crowd them, and they just keep making honey. They got honey clear down the bottom. They got it stacked right up to the bottom of the feeder, and I pull it off. It's all honey, and there's not one queen cell in there. So what I got to do?
Well, I mean, you're fortunate to be in an area where they're making that much honey. Some years, this time of the year, we start experience a dearth where you're not getting as much. For some reason, this year, with the amount of rain we got, they're bringing honey in a lot longer than they normally do. And I don't know if it's going to be the same across the United States in different areas, but around Georgia and in Alabama and over North and South Carolina, they're all bringing in honey right now for some reason, which is good. You don't have to feed them.
Yeah, I got so much honey on mine. I don't really want any more honey. I took off all the honey I wanted, so I don't see any need of, just taking it off. What do you think about that?
What I usually do, I'm waiting right now for Steven to get some extra queen cells. And if he brings me over 30 or 40 here, Monday or Tuesday, I've got hives out there that's got 2 supers of honey. What I'll do is put a frame or 2 frames of honey in a box, and I'll put a queen cell that's ready to hatch, and I'll shake a frame or 2 of bees in it. And I'll just let them, use that to build up. And I'll put my 3 extra frames in there, with foundation in it. I like to use the honey to make queens or to make splits this time of the year. I'll make my splits up to the end of September with queen cells or with mated queens, either one.
Trying to get queen cells because those mini frames, I've got those, they've filled them out. They're full of honey, and I don't have any queen cells to put with them,
Well, the only alternative on that there is to start grafting. I mean, a lot of people that want to get into grafting, they don't realize you have to dedicate a couple of your hives just to draw out your cells. So, you're going to lose your honey production there. So that's the alternative.
Really interested in the honey anyway,
Yeah.
And I have made 3.
If you're going to use several hundred cells a week, then grafting might be your answer.
Okay. Well, I got to work on that, I guess. Okay. Thank you.
Patricia.
Hey, everybody. It's good to see y'all. It's been a couple of weeks. Missed everybody. I had a question for you, Don, and I don't know exactly what's going on. We've gone into the hive, found the queen, lots of brood, everything's going great. Schedules to come pick up their nuke, and completely disappeared from the box. Everybody else is there, hat and happy. Everything's great. Where did the queen go? Is there something particular going on that you've heard about with queens, or is there something new eating them?
No, if the queen was in the nuke box and was laying, unless you got a predator or a skunk, or if you got, lizards or stuff like that, or a lot of hornets, you could lose it. But that's one reason I get all my nukes ready 24 hours before a customer comes to pick them up. Because if you get them ready and then in 5 days a customer comes, sometimes you lose that customer when you open the box up. You can't find the queen, or if the box is too full and they've made a queen cell or started a queen cell, and then that scares people. They say, oh, they're getting ready to swarm. But an experienced person would grab it, see? So a lot of times you could spot a queen today and then they're running so fast you can't find them the next day.
Nope, they're gone. And I've had other people say the same thing lately. I didn't know if maybe there was some kind of new pest out there or something. It's odd.
No,
we haven't been able to figure it out.
Every year this time, the queens start, returning is getting bad. What the weather is, if you're getting 60 to 70% of your queens returning right now, you're doing good. Right now, Stephen's probably averaging 85, 95% takes on his grafts. But, you know, in the springtime, in March, he's getting almost 99%, you know. So everything changes with the humidity. Everything is variable.
It's been really hot here the last week or so. We went from freezing wet spring to burning hot. We
I
skipped
wouldn't
whatever
think
was
you
supposed
would
to.
have anything in there killing your queen, or, you know, unless when you examine the hive, you could have dropped it off. I always double check and I make sure I got my eye on that queen on the frame when I put the frame back in the box. And sometimes when you start working a bunch of boxes, you get careless and a queen falls off, you know, so that.
Yeah. Yeah, we look for that kind of stuff. We always check around on the ground and stuff because, you know, they fall off, they fly away, and they come back and stuff. But this is something different. I don't know. Maybe it's just something weird we're experiencing. I have to pay more attention to what kind of pest I got out there, I think.
Okay. All right. Over to Matt. Go ahead, Matt.
I raised my hand because I just opened up one of our week splits that we had done a while back, and exactly the same issue happened. I only had 2 frames in there, and the queen just started to lay, and I opened it up today, and there was a queen cell, but no queen. And they obviously hadn't swarmed because, you know, all the bees were still in there. I mean, there weren't a whole lot of bees in there, but all the bees that were there obviously didn't leave with her. So, you know, I just wanted to mention that. You know, that's just a tidbit of information.
That's why queen rearing is more of an art form anymore. Springtime, anybody can get in there and blunder around and make a queen, but as the time progresses into the summer and late spring, it gets harder and harder. You have to change your techniques.
Well,
so one thing you might do is add more bees to your split.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we did these splits a long time ago, and this queen really wasn't doing well, but she was in there and she was laying, and, you know, they produced a queen cell, but inside the box, something happened. And I don't, that's what I think.
Do you check for mites?
We've been treating.
You need to check because a lot of times people overlook the most obvious things. And one thing is this time of the year, if you mites get high, that queen will be in there one day and be gone the next, or they'll make a queen cell. And when they make a queen cell, normally that queen is not going to be any good because it's not well fed. There's not enough bees in there. They're fighting the Varroa and everything else. Usually when your mites get high, then next thing moves in is the beetles.
Yeah, we've seen some hive beetles. Not, you know, it's not late summer yet, but yeah, they're there. Obviously, I mean, they're everywhere. But I didn't think about mites killing the queen. I didn't really know.
Well, one thing most people never think about is if the queen cell has mites in it and the queen goes out and mates, maybe she's not getting mated good, or maybe she doesn't come back. That's one thing we found about 4 or 5 years ago. We was getting 85, 95% hatching on our queens. The cells was hatching, perfect hatch out. You see them walking in there and they just never return, a lot of them. And when your percentages drop down to 50, 45%, you know you got a problem. And a lot of times, the longer you're in beekeeping, it's the most obvious thing that turns around and bites you because you're not thinking about it.
Well, this was a mated queen. It was a purchase mated queen, and we just didn't supply enough resources to that split.
Yes, we don't know.
So we don't know what happened, but it just struck me that Patricia had a similar problem where there was a queen there one day, and I swear I didn't roll this queen. I know that because it's a 5-frame box. There's 2 frames in there. She's starting to lay, everything's good, and then she's gone. And it just sounded very similar to her situation. Just thought I'd mention it. And it could be Varroa, very well.
We'll check for that. But also, totally different, like sidebar. I've always had, for like the last 10 years, I've had one hive. And now because of your chat, we are up to 18 hives.
18. So
I mean, I've always had one hive in my backyard for my garden, and I never thought about having more. And because of you, Don, we now have 18 and counting.
It's good. I mean,
So
it's
thank you
the
very much.
simplest things work out there. You don't have to buy a lot of stuff. I mean,
Oh, and
absolutely, and
these
we've
are all-
listened to you. Right.
These are all swarms. These are freebies.
yeah.
Free
And so much fun. Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
Philip is up next. Go ahead, Philip. Can't hear you. Make sure your microphone's plugged in. Nothing. We'll come back to you. All right. Ernest, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. I'm John. I'm going to ask a question here. Two questions, actually. I had bought this queen from some guy in Georgia, and now she's laying all the way up into the third deep super. I mean, she's packing the third super with brood like she would the first one.
You can always try to return them.
I was thinking about this. She's just laying too well. But my question is, what do I do in a situation where I don't have queens? I'm honey bound, I'm pollen bound, I'm brood bound. I mean, there's a ton of brood in there.
If you can't get queen cells, the next best thing is to buy queens.
Okay.
Buy mated queens and then make splits.
Okay.
Because, you know, bees are only going to do two things. They multiply and they store honey. And if they're in that mood where they're storing a lot of honey, walk-away splits just don't work well at this time of the year because almost 2 months. If you put a queen cell in there, you're down a week to 11 days, you know, because the queen has to hatch, fly out and mate, and then hope she comes back. By throwing a mated queen in there, you got a small investment, but if you sell 1 quart of honey, you got your money back on that queen, and you're back in business, and you're not losing, you know, production.
Okay. Well, the second part of that question, if you don't mind me asking, in another hive, I finally found the queen. I was excited because I'm not very good at finding the queen. I just look for new larvae. And when I found her, I looked at her, she looked at me, and then she flew off the frame. So my question, will she fly back to the hive or is she gone?
No, sometimes if you just kind of close the hive up and watch where you're walking and just get away from the hive. I've had them return.
Okay.
Not 100%, but a lot of times they'll come back. If that queen was mated in that yard originally, they usually come back.
Okay, well, thank you.
Okay. That's another reason I try to train students to, when you inspect a frame, hold it over the box. In case a queen falls off, they'll go back in the box.
Oh, no, she didn't fall. She flew
Well,
10
you know,
feet in the air and off she went.
I understand that, but, you know, I try to teach them to inspect over a hive. That way, you know, it's an insurance policy.
Yeah, well, I know. It's frustrating when you finally find the queen and you watch her fly away on you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Over to our Aussie friend, Ricky.
Yeah, g'day. I've had a couple of super sieges happen here in the middle of winter. One of them's the queen, the version's been mated. I'm just wondering, do the bees know that there's drones available for mating with before they do a super seizure?
Usually, you're getting honey bound when they start doing that, or you bumped your queen. But normally, there's always going to be queens with drones around. You know, no hive's going to have absolutely no drones in it. You know, you're going to have a small amount even in the wintertime.
Oh, that's good news because we've had a big honey flow, so I've got some honey bound hives, and I've been trying to move the honey around to try and give them space and that sort of stuff.
One thing you might want to do is, I don't know if they sell green comb, plastic green comb where you live, but we run about 15 to 20 pieces per yard. And put one in on the outside of the frame, and that's going to give you a full frame of drones. And that kind of helps if you're mating a lot. If you're not making a lot of splits or you're not mating a lot of queens, then normally the hive will have enough drones in it. But
Oh, it's good.
there's times here where we're putting out, 100 cells in a week's time. So if you're not got enough drones out there, you can go through them pretty quick.
Yeah, well, that was actually the other question I was going to ask. Like, what sort of yard infrastructure would you need if you were going to raise like 100 queens a month?
100 queens a month, I would run at least one frame of that green comb in there. I'm running 200 to 500 hives here, and right now I've been selling a lot of bees, so I'm probably running right at 200 right now. Nucs, I probably got 25 to 35 8-frame stuff, and half of the 8-frame stuff has got one frame of drone comb in it, and that's plastic drone comb.
And how far away should the yard be?
Well, I mean, everybody's got a different thing. I mate my queens in my yard right here.
Okay. I just thought that they didn't mate with the drones from the same yard.
Well, I don't, it's debatable, there's a lot of different things. I've had good success running them right here, and we have a lot of hives, but I run several different lines of bees, so you're always going to get some mix up right there.
Okay, thanks, Don.
Okay.
Okay, Patricia.
Yeah, I'm really sorry. I can't remember his name, but Ernest's son. I was going to tell him a little story. They're my bees. I'm the beekeeper here. Leon, my husband, is my helper. And so when we first started, he was helping. He would just move a box back and forth for me because I don't lift anything. Well, we were out there in the yard, and I seriously thought we were going to get a divorce over this one. He moved something, and my queen flew away into the horizon. And I thought I was going to kill him right there because he did it. It was his fault. And I've learned over time that if you just leave the hive open for 5 or 10 minutes, she'll fly back. If you watch, the bees will get up on the edge of the box and they'll fan the pheromone up into the air to call her back. And so just leave the lid off and walk away, because I had to calm down, take a deep breath. And when I went back, she had come back. And for the Australian guy, they do not mate in the hive. They only mate in flight, the queen, but she does mate with drones from the yard there if they fly far enough. Generally, the drones in your yard don't fly as far as your queens do. So she's mating with drones from feral beehives or your neighbor's beehives. So they don't mate with their drones from their box. And then also, I wanted to see your cat.
She's right here. Keeping me company.
Yeah, we could hear him, but we couldn't see him.
Oh, okay.
That's all.
All right. Philip is going to give it a try again. Go ahead, Philip.
All right, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
we hear you now.
Okay, hey Don.
Hey.
I got a nuke I put in probably a few weeks back. I just moved it the other day, and I checkerboarded it like you talked about in another video I watched, and they seem to be doing pretty good. There's still a couple outside frames, not much going on. I thought about splitting it and just doing a walk away split with it and letting them make their own queen for the second box. Is it too late to do that?
I wouldn't suggest doing it this time of the year, because you're going to lose almost a minimum of 6 weeks. Because the minute you do that walk away, it's going to take 16 days to produce the queen. It's going to take another 5-6 days for it to hatch, fly out, and mate. And then from that point, you've got to count 21 days for that brood to hatch. Then you got to add another 2 to 3 weeks on top of that before you're going to get any foraging. Okay. So if you can find a mated queen, that's your best bet. If you can't find it and you've got queen cells, if you put a ripe cell in there, you're only going to set yourself back a little bit. But this time of the year, if you don't have a lot of experience, invest in some queens. Get some diversity in your bee yard.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay.
Hey, Dennis, you're up next. Can't hear you. Check your mute. Nothing. Okay, we'll come back. Nobody else has their hand raised.
Here, I thought everybody would have questions.
Even, hang on. Steve's got a question. Go ahead, Steve.
Bee withdrawals.
Go ahead, Steve.
Okay. Hi, Don. Thanks for your knowledge and help. Common country, and we have swarms everywhere. Everybody left the state with their bees. And I had a swarm and found an empty frame, medium hive body in my backyard. I wanted to try beekeeping next year, but they're free bees. It's a healthy hive, and it's ready to add a super. They're going to swarm if I don't. I want to put a deep body hive underneath that and set that on top. I just don't know how to go about doing
If you got them in a medium box right now and you got bees in there, the smartest thing is to set your deep brood box on top of it. Let them draw it out, and then when they get it drawn out 3/4 of the way, then reverse it, and then put another super on top.
All right. That sounds great. We're putting almonds in also at 30 acres next year, and so I do want to build up a yard. Yeah. So appreciate
if you watch the videos I got up there, there's everything from one thing to do to another. To make splits, to build boxes. They're all on those YouTube videos.
Oh yeah, I've been learning a lot.
It's not hard. Just get in there and stick with it.
Yeah, definitely. That's it.
All right, we're gonna try Dennis again. Go ahead, Dennis.
All right, can you hear me now?
We hear you.
I had to take my headset off. Something wasn't working. Got 2 questions. Have you ever moved the queen down in the yard a little ways, have her go back to the original box?
Not if she's mated.
I took a mated queen out. They were overcrowded, not very well. I'll take that, and I frame a sealed brood, moved her down the row, and she made her way back.
Did you have that queen marked?
No, I don't mark my queens.
Okay, well, you know for sure it was the same queen? Because sometimes you can have 2 queens in a box.
Well, I never seen them. It's a possibility, but I've never seen them. But I just thought it was interesting. They went on and built several cells. That's the purpose I was going to do it.
Yeah.
And then, lo and behold, she showed up. She wasn't in the original box, the next box that I pulled her over to. I didn't know if they'd ever went back or not.
It's possible if you got more than one hive that you had queens that flew to another box. Because a lot of times you have a queenless hive there. If you got a queen out mating, they'll go in a box.
Yeah, well, I'm just curious. Also, when you, where do you get your boxes, or do you make them for your package bees?
We try to make them.
Okay, I was just figuring that.
But if you're going to sell packaged bees, belong to 2 or 3 different bee clubs. There's a lot of people that buy a lot of bees at bee clubs. They're going to throw them away. Okay. Tell them you're recycling.
I've seen some plastic ones for sale, but I was looking for the old wooden ones.
Yeah, the wood ones are good. The nice thing about the plastic ones, now my son likes the plastic ones because they're called bee bus. They're white milky plastic. They're about $6.50 a piece. We got I think we got 40 or 50 left. If you're sending a package to somebody, they've got vent all the way around them, and there's a spot in the top where you can put a queen in each side, and they can feed the queen. That's the only advantage. But personally, I don't like them because my fingernails get tore up trying to open those little locks on the top of that sliding piece to get that can out.
Do you have a design on your website for them cages?
Do I have a site about them?
No, on your site, your website, do you have a design?
Of what, my packages?
Yes.
No, they're just a standard package. You make them 6 inches wide, 10 inches high.
Okay. And also to the guy about his queen getting bred, I've seen several queens leave, go up in the air 15 foot, and she's already mating right there in the yard before she got very far away. I've seen that time and time again, so.
I have a video that was done about 3 years ago where a queen just came back and had been mated.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Okay, next up is Steve. Go ahead, Steve.
Hi, Don and fellow beekeepers. My question is, I guess, queen related. I've got a nuke that I put out a couple of days ago. It's been less than a week, and the queen's gone. There's no eggs left. I've got a queen on the way. How long does it take for the genetics of that hive to turn over?
About 6 to 8 weeks, you're going to start seeing a little turnover in them.
Okay. That was my question. Appreciate it.
What do you get? I got a mean hive, you're changing genetics, or are you just trying to get your numbers up?
Trying to get the numbers up, and I'm not exactly sure what happened to her. I don't know.
You sure you're queenless?
Yes. Well, I can't say 100%, but I didn't see any eggs or larvae in the hive.
Just because you don't see eggs this time of the year doesn't mean your queen's not there.
That is
lid
true.
off, listen, and the hive will be real noisy as soon as you take that lid off if there's no queen in there.
Okay.
The next thing you can do is stand with the sun coming over your shoulder. Face your back to the sun and
Right.
look at the center of the frame. Just look for white milk.
Right.
That's 4-day-old eggs, larvae.
Okay. Yeah, here in Houston, we've gotten so much rain here lately, and I've got 4 more days of rain coming. They're not doing well. Every bee's in the hive, and every time I go out there, they're packed and not happy about it at all.
This time of the year, probably 80% of the people that call that say they don't have a queen probably do have a queen in there. They're just getting so much backfilling, they're not seeing eggs.
Right.
Or they could have a little bit of a mite problem, and the queens are starting to slow down a little bit.
Okay. Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate it.
Over to Paul.
Don, on those green drone plastic frames, once they're full and you throw it in the freezer, and then what do? You just scrape the brood off of there, or?
Just set it back in the hive. They'll clean it out. Or if you got chickens, they'll help you.
So they'll drag all of those dead drones out of there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Why would you want to do that? You put drone combing if you want to, get for mating.
No, I was just curious because they those, like somebody was talking about before, those frames to help the control of Varroa mites.
Well, even if you do a little bit of reading, they take a 6-inch circle, a glass circle, and they put nitrogen on it and they freeze it, and then they put it back in the hive, and they do that to see the mites, not the mites, the hygienic behavior of the bees, to see how well they clean them out.
Oh, okay. Is that where that term hygienic queens comes from?
Well, everybody's going to claim this, claim that, You have to look and see yourself. You could have hygienic bees and have beetles in there. You could have other things in there that's causing problems,
Because I tell you, I know in the spring when I was cleaning my bottom boards, there were some bottom boards that were spotless.
Mm-hmm.
There were other bottom boards that were full of all kinds of crap.
Well, it depends on population, depends on how old your comb is. There's a lot of variables in there,
Yeah.
If you got old comb from one year to the next and it hasn't been used, they put it in there, they're going to clean out and you're going to find a lot of debris in the bottom.
Yeah. All right. I was just curious about those frames.
Okay. Down to Matt. Go ahead, Matt.
Website for making them.
I just wanted to mention what Don had told me when I mentioned trying to control Varroa with those green frames. You lose so much productivity from the bees because that could have been a completely laid frame full of bees. And he pointed that out to me. So, I think if you're going to be controlling the Varroa, the better way is to treat with oxalic acid as opposed to, basically setting your queen back or your hive back a complete frame of, that's a lot of bees that could be produced.
It's a lot of honey.
Yeah, absolutely. It's honey and it's bees. It's, it's both. So I just wanted to mention that because Don pointed that out to me, and because I went down the same road, had Varroa, thought, some of this internet advice about buying these green frames, putting them in, and Don mentioned that, and I just wanted to put that out for everybody.
There is a lot of information out there. You just kind of have to sort through it. That's why I done the video on the ProVap versus the hand vaporizer. If you got a few hives, that hand vaporizer, and if you're doing it yourself, you can keep it under control pretty well. The bad thing about it, or the drawback, is if you let somebody else do it and you have a lot of hives, you're going to burn frames. And if you got excessive space, you're going to get wax at the bottom, and you could get a little melting and the smoking in there. So the ProVap, I did that video out there. You can do about 2.5 a minute. On 5-frame boxes that we use one framing with a circle, I can do 4 or 5 because I load it up and then I stick it in there and just give them about a second or 2 seconds blast. But, that hand vaporizer, it's the thing. The next thing would be, the shop towels with the liquid, but you have to figure out the way you want to treat your bees. Not everybody wants to do it the way I'm going to do it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Don.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. John, go ahead.
Hello, another question. Last year I had started the season and I had 2 deep nukes, and I went through winter with both nukes. I got them both through the winter. And then in the spring, I was very aggressive on my splitting. I mean, I didn't do anything technical. If there was 6 queen cells on it, I just threw it in a box and let the best queen win. Right now, I'm sitting with about 20 10-frame boxes that are 2 and 3 deep. Now, as I head towards winter, what's the best configuration to get my bees through? Do I break them all back down into 5-frame boxes, or do I try to take them through in the 10-frame?
That's strictly going to be up to your decision. To me, I have to do numbers. I play numbers all the time. I have to play odds. So I have some in my yard right now that are in 2 deeps with 2 supers on right now, and I'm waiting for cells. So I have 8-frame stuff, and I got 16 frames of brood deep, and I've got 2 boxes, which is 16 frames. That's 32. I'm going to make 20 splits or 25 splits, and I split all the way up to the end of September. So if I'm looking at one hive to go through the winter, whether I'm living in Pennsylvania, Ohio, or Georgia, I got one hive and I'm running a risk of 100% loss. If I split it 15 to 20 times and I lost half, I'm still 10 ahead.
Okay.
I play numbers.
It makes sense. So you're saying break those big boxes down to nukes again if you can.
That's what I do. Put a hive top feeder on there, hold that heat down. If you have to pull some honey, you can always feed honey back. But don't dilute your honey. Feed it back the way you took it out.
Okay. Do you leave it 2 deep as well, or do you just do 1 deep for the winter?
Personally, I run singles through the winter.
Okay.
We've got a yard down south of here. We can run singles and run probably 20 pounds of honey in the box, and it's more than enough to go through. And they're 5 weeks ahead of what we are right here. I'm at the edge of the mountain. So we're 5 weeks in time-wise difference just there.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, over to Paul again. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, Don, I have a bunch of these 4-frame double nukes, which I wanted to do some walkaway splits in, because I wanted to do the splits next week, and I didn't want the hives to get too big. I wanted to keep them small and overwinter them, maybe 4 over 4, but now maybe, you were saying maybe I should go out and get some mated queens.
You have to make those decisions yourself, I mean, if you're on the road a lot, you can only do, but you can't buy, you can buy every product that's in that book. There's one thing in that book you can't buy, and that's time. You got to have enough time to work those yards. And if you're not working them, they can leave on you quick.
Yeah, I just didn't want to spend, because I have 5 of those double nukes, and I don't want to really go out and spend the money on 10 queens. I'd rather just do the walkaway splits.
Well, you always run that risk of the bees not coming back.
Yeah, no, exactly.
The longer into the summer, your chances go down for queens to return. It's just
Yeah.
that's you got more predators out there.
Yeah. All right, I may just do a few and see how it goes.
Hey, you got to spend a little money to have, it's a hobby, You got to spend that money a little bit.
Yeah. All right, thanks, Don.
Okay.
We're all caught up for the moment. Nobody else has any questions? Oh, Matt's back. Go ahead, Matt.
Well, you mentioned that we lost a queen in that 2-frame split, and they got a queen cell, which I think we are not interested in because that queen left, and it just doesn't look like a good picture. But we also we took a queen out of a small split that we had done, and they've got like 5 or 6 queen cells. And I guess the question is, at this time of year, I mean, we're in southern Louisiana. It's probably very similar climate to you, Don. What are your percentages at this time of year for queens coming back and getting mated?
Right now, in this time of the year, if you can get 70 to 75%, you're doing pretty good.
So I guess we should expect maybe 50%. So if we put, if we cut out the 6, maybe we get 3.
Well, you can get queen cells. I mean, Ernest was saying he couldn't get queen cells to start. One thing we do a lot of times, if you want to get them to draw cells, is cage your queen.
Right.
Cage the queen, and then you get cells.
Well, we took a queen out of a box and put it. We have an observation hive we built, and we put it in there, and so we left that nook out there, and they produce 6, 7 cells. 2 of them are so close together you can't cut them out without basically them being the same cell. So we've got 6, but I think we're trying to replenish 2 boxes. So I guess my question is, what is the percentage chance we're going to get those mated?
Well, you can make queens as long as you got, weather, 65, 70 degrees, you can get queens mated, no problem. If you got enough drones in the area, which you should have. Now, when you're looking at your cell, you said the 2-frame box only had 1 cell.
No, that was 1 box. I'm sorry. We have 2 boxes. One of them only had the 1 cell. That's where the queen left, that I talked about with what happened to Patricia. The other one.
Look at your cell now. You make sure that you have no long cells. Some people think the longer they are, the better they are. Those are more emergency cells. They're not going to be good. There's a lot of books out there that shows you what an average queen cell should look like. If it doesn't look like it fall in that range, then it's either underfed or it's overfed. So it's not going to produce good queens.
Okay, I guess I need to do some research on that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I should get some pictures next time we can show you, but I can look at them if they're usually the first joint of your little finger. That should be a standard cell. On the little finger, the first joint, that's about how long a good cell should be. If it's longer than that, I'd call it.
Okay, I guess I'm trying to remember from memory, and I've got a dog on my lap, I'm sorry. I think a couple of them were like what you're saying. They were very narrow and maybe long. So some of them may not have been, may not make it. So I guess.
Well, they'll make it. It's just they don't produce as good, or they produce inferior layers, like workers.
Well, then we've got a hive right now, and we were discussing it because we've got 6 cells. We were also discussing replacing one of the queens. And I think we talked about this with a hive we had last year that we kept. And
it's mean.
They're mean.
Every other hive is fun. This is a mean hive.
Right. And I think we're just going to have to keep them through the winter and use their resources next year, requeen them with something docile, because I think it's getting so late in the year, I don't think we're going to be able to reliably requeen them. So
Well, you know, another thing, you know, you might not have thought about is there's a lot of people that are in the boat this time of the year. They don't have enough drones. Get you a hive and put 4 or 5 sheets of the green comb in there, and you could run them through a queen excluder and sell nothing but drones. There's a good market for that.
I've never heard of that. Who? Really?
Who would buy them? Anybody who's raising queens.
Okay. Well, yeah. This is the first I've heard of that. Okay.
Well, there's a ripathy, and there's a lot of things in beekeeping. You can sell workers, 15, 20 workers in a cage. I mean, that's $25. In a hive, you can produce a couple 100,000 cages, no problem.
Yeah, yeah. I guess it's getting in touch with those people, I guess. I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Thanks, son.
Yep.
Okay. Philip, go ahead.
Hey, one more question. This is my first year in beekeeping, and I got the one nuke I told you about, and I got 2 packages. The 2 packages I put in May 27th, and they're doing well. I mean, they're packed out now. I just added a medium super on both deeps yesterday. I was told to like keep feeding them, obviously up until you put the honey supers on, but how long should you feed them? Because it's all new equipment. I mean, they're drawn out comb well. Obviously, the bottom deep is side to side bees, and I think there's about a quarter frame on the 10th frame or on the outside frames left. I did put the medium supers on yesterday, no excluder, because I want them to use that for space, go for honey later. But should I keep feeding them right up until I put the honey super on?
You want to make bees and you want to make splits, feed them. They're not going to take sugar water if there's a honey flow on. And
right.
Unless you're in a remote area, they're pulling honey in right now.
Okay.
Where do you live?
Yeah. I'm in Michigan. We had a lot of rain back when I put them in. We've been dry for about the last week, and we got no rain in the next week. And I noticed that the packages, I go out every couple days and check. You know, being the first year, I want to make sure I do halfway right. But some days they'll eat that quart in a day and a half. Other times it'll be 2 or 3, 4 days. So
a quart is nothing.
Right. Oh yeah. Yeah, I know. I just got the little feeder on the front.
If you're drawing out frames, a quart is nothing. I mean, we use 5-frame boxes out here, and we got a 1.5 gallon shoe box as a feeder on top, and they'll pull that down in 24 hours. And that's about a 3-to-1 syrup, not 1-to-1.
Right. I'm using 1-to-1 a little honeybee healthy, but I couldn't find any bigger feeders for the Boardman feeder for the front. So I was just using those because I just have the 2 hives and the nuke. So it's really, I mean, I don't mind visiting. So.
Well, you're going to have to put an empty box over the top. You can use a Boardman feeder with another box over the top of it. But get that feed a little stronger. You know, they're not going to draw out a lot of wax on that weak syrup like that.
Okay, so bump it up a little bit?
I would.
Okay.
Once that, because you've got a good honey flow coming in, you know, your fall goldenrod, that'll make 2 or 3 supers of honey.
Okay. Okay, I'll increase the ratio then a little bit.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay.
Okay, Patricia.
Yeah, some of the guys are kind of new and that kind of thing. And I just wanted to say that you got to keep in mind that commercial beekeepers, or really anybody that has more than 5 hives, you're no longer a backyard beekeeper. So the things that you hear at the bee club are not really going to relate to what you're going to be doing in your hives. So, you know, follow Don's information. But another important thing is to take really good notes about what happens this year. It'll pay off next year, because when you go to the bee club and they tell you that you can't make queens after June 1st, and I make queens up until September, then something's going wrong there. So that's where you need to really think more along the lines of, what do commercial beekeepers do? Anything more than 5 beehives in your yard, you're at a different level from the guy that has 2 hives, or the guy that has 2 hives and wants to have 5 or 10 hives. You still need to be looking forward to, what do people do that have more than that little bit in the backyard that they want to have just for pollination, you know. but you need to really focus on a bigger picture and you'll be more successful. Take really good notes about what you hear. And if you're not sure about what you hear, come on the Facebook page and ask one of us or call Don, because a lot of times you don't know that they're telling you wrong information and you try to do too many different things and get yourself frustrated trying to like overthink it. So just want to be encouraging to everybody that's getting started and trying to think, well, I got 2 hives this year. Next year I want to have 10 hives. Well, you can have 10 hives this year. You still have time. So don't worry about what the guys at the bee club tell you so much. That's all. And honey is a particular, nectar flow is a particular time of year. So my nectar flow is already ended. I've already done my spring harvest in June. So if you're in Michigan and you're just now getting honey flow started, you're still gonna, once you harvest that honey, you're gonna put those supers right back on, because your fall harvest is what you give to the bees. That's your goldenrod, your ragweed, your fall asters, all that stuff. That's for the bees over winter. And I've seen a lot of people on the Facebook page saying, oh, I don't want to mess with the honey because that's for the bees. They'll eat all that honey. So go ahead and harvest it and put your supers back on and let them have the fall honey flow. There's plenty out there, but think along in a bigger picture. And if you're not sure, ask one of us. Be happy to help. And the honey flow thing is the biggest thing. I think people are really missing out on when is nectar flow in your area. And if you don't know, there's maps online. Find out from other people on the Facebook page that are in your area when nectar flow starts for you. You might be a week earlier or a week later, but don't miss it because you waited till June to think about putting on honey supers. Because my honey supers went on in March. So that's all. Just trying to be encouraging to everybody.
A lot of times, bee clubs, people that give a lot of advice to everybody, ask them how many hives they go through the winter with and how often they buy bees, that type of stuff. That's why I dedicate doing this to help people. And I have that Bee Man group that we answer your questions. There's a lot of things that people tell you to discourage you. They're selling honey in your neighborhood and they'll steer you wrong. You know, there's 3 people I talk about in the bee yard that really put you out of business. That's wouldn't, couldn't, and can't. And when people tell you can't do something, I'll prove them wrong every time. That's why I take people that if they listen, they can go from 1 or 2 hives to several hundred. They're never going to build equipment fast enough. It's simple, you know, just keep it as simple as possible. Don't overthink it.
Okay. Next up is Steve. Go ahead, Steve.
Don, is there, what are the pros and cons of a clipped queen?
What is the opposing reason? Well, to me, my thinking is I would think like a bee. If I seen the queen in there was clipped, I would think she's, you know, defective, and I'd try to replace her. It doesn't stop a swarm. I've seen clipped queens crawl out the front and be on the ground, and if you got ants and stuff, they can lose it. I don't mark queens. I mean, if someone insists on having a queen marked, I charge $10. I just call it stupid tax because the bees are going to replace that queen. So, you know, I mean, keep it as natural. You don't find marked queens or clipped queens in the woods, and those bees survive.
True.
When people start overthinking things, they got to reinvent the wheel. Keep it simple.
All right, thanks, sir.
Okay.
Okay, Dennis, go ahead.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
I made a bunch of hive top feeders like you have on your website. They work wonderful. I want to use them till they fall apart. You ever noticed out of about 20 nucs I got out here, I have 2 out of the 20. They are bound and determined to drown in it. They're all made the same way. The others run dry without losing a bee. You ever noticed that occasionally in your bees?
Sometimes it depends. Now, we've changed that hive top feeder probably in the last 25 years a couple dozen times. The last one with the shoebox, now we started that one out with a solid back and just wrapped the front part with hardware cloth. Now my son is wrapping it completely around and setting it ahead just about 1/8 of an inch. And that way they have a ladder going up the back, up the front, and it kind of limits the amount of drowning. But now hives that are double deep that we use for shaking, if there's no honey flow on, they will get up in there and they're just like kids. They'll push to the front of the line and they push each other down into the water or the feed. So that's where you're probably getting it.
Might be, I figure genetics, they'll drown themselves out and I'll replace them. I'm just curious if you noticed it. All right, thank you.
Okay, next up is Matt. Go ahead, Matt.
I just wanted to throw this out there, Don, and we've got a mean queen, and I'd spoken with another beekeeper about that, and you mentioned you don't have any use for marking or clipping wings, but for a small-time beekeeper who doesn't have the resources that you do, and if they're trying to maybe produce from a particular queen, what I was told is if you mark the queen, you know that queen hasn't been replaced, but what if that marking wears off? And so the idea is you clip the wing so you can tell even if the marking wears off. And I understand you're running a big time operation. This is not, this is for maybe more small time beekeepers that are first starting off, as far as I understood it. Does that make sense?
You got, beekeeping is kind of individual. It's just like when we treat our bees, what I would treat my bees with and what anybody else would be totally different things. I can't afford to replace 60 to 80% of my bees because I don't want to treat. I'm going to keep mine pure. I ain't going to do nothing. I'm going to keep treatment free. So, you have to make those decisions. When it gets into your purse, you're going to make a better decision.
Well, but that's to my point.
Yeah.
If I'm trying to upscale, which I think we're thinking about, I want to make sure that queen is the queen. What if I miss checking that box for 2 weeks and they swarm? I want to know that. I want to know that queen.
I run a lot of hives, and Ernest is here, and he could probably tell you. You say you want to clip it so you make sure that that's your queen. I run a whole lot more beehives than you do. And Ernest can testify. I told him what color the queen was in different hives before we even opened them. You learn your bees.
You're better than I am. I'm just saying that it's a tool, and
Don't shoot yourself in the foot. There's no need for it, really.
Okay.
If you open the hive and the hive's quiet, you got a queen. If you want to go further, pick a frame. If you've got sealed brood, open brood, you got it.
Well, I think what my point was, if we've identified a particular hive that is doing exceptionally well and we want to graft from that hive, you want to make sure that queen is the queen that has the genetics like the.
If that's the case, we've got some that we graft from that are black with absolutely no markings on. I can go in there and I can tell you in a heartbeat if it's gone or it's changed or anything else about it.
Well, once again, you've been doing this for many, many years. I'm just saying that somebody gave some advice that for the new beekeeper may apply until we can.
Are they selling queens by any chance? Huh?
That's a good point. That's a good point. All right. I just wanted to throw that out there. I'm not.
Here's the thing. If you're going to get into selling bees on a larger scale, you're going to buy breeder stock. And if you buy breeder stock, you're paying $300 to maybe $500 for a queen. Now, do you want to amputate a wing on her and then hope she's going to do good?
Well, I guess that's a question. I mean, she's never should leave the box because if she swarms on you, you need to know that because
you would know it in a minute.
Well, yeah, you're probably right.
No, he is right.
All right. Okay, all right.
Sounds like you got ganged up on there, Matt. All right, let's see. We got Anthony is up next. Go ahead, Anthony.
Okay.
when I first started, I mocked the queens because, like a lot of people when they start, you have trouble finding the queen. I had a hell of a time. I had one I couldn't find for 4 months. But then, like I said on here before, it just came to me when you know where to look and what to look for. I just found it very easy to find the queen. I can find the queen in any one of my boxes right now. It just came to me with experience, right? So I'm not interested in marking them anymore. And Matt, I understand your point fully, but if the queen leaves, she's gone. Whether you know she's gone or she's there, it doesn't make any difference. She's gone, right? And if she swarms and she takes whatever they do, 60% of the honey and 60% of the bees, I think you're going to notice that the population is down when you look in the box, won't you? Don, you should notice 60% of your bees are gone. You kind of know the box is half full or it's busting. I don't know, just my personal thing is I would never clip a queen.
You would notice you've got a swarm unless you're away a long period of time.
Yeah, and once it happens, yeah, it's. I used to think the exact same thing as Matt. People said, well, why you mark your queen? I said, well, it's easy to find, and if she leaves, then I'll know she's gone. And then he said, well, what difference does it make? She's gone. Well, that's a good point. No.
Another thing is the way you look at your frame. Most people look almost straight on the frame. Lower the frame down to your belly button. Look on a 45-degree angle. You'll spot them every time.
Yeah, I don't have any problem. I think out of my 7 boxes, I think 2 of my queens, 2, maybe 3 are still marked yellow. So they're a couple of years old and they're still there and they're doing okay. But I don't plan on marking anymore, and just my own personal preference. I would never clip a queen. I think
Matt wants to
I
interrupt.
don't see it. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to throw this out there. Last year we had a queen that absconded, and she narrowed down into a small queen we couldn't find. And so it's yes, you should be able to find the queen, but sometimes she becomes very hard to find. And I just want to put that out there.
That's true.
Marking them, if you've got a small amount of queens or hives, that's, it's not as big of a deal. If you're running a commercial operation, I completely understand. It just makes it instant and easy to find them.
Agreed. It does.
The value of it is, we can argue the finer points of that, whether you're trying to maintain genetics or whatever. You've got a great producing queen. You want to make sure she's the queen you had last year. And, what if you can't check the box for 2 months during the summer and you don't know if it's swarmed? I mean, I can tell you right now that mean hive we've got is the most populous hive we've got.
I'm waiting for them to swarm. They're so mean.
They did swarm, and they got meaner.
But why do you want? I wouldn't want them to swarm and lose 60% of my bees. I'd change the queen first, right?
No, I don't disagree with you, but they don't produce as much honey as the swarm we caught at the very beginning of the season. They overwintered, they swarmed, and they're busting out at the seams, but they're not producing nearly as much honey as the one that we caught. So, keeping track of what you've got does have some value as far as genetics, I think.
No, especially, you're a young guy, you got up to 18 now, you and your wife, you want to keep going and get bigger. So, and you're really into it, and that's a good thing. So you want to try to keep an eye on your genetics. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. I don't think, maybe Dawn disagree. I don't know.
Well,
I'm not.
Well, Don's got all nice bees. He doesn't have to worry about this.
Well, you mentioned your hive is so mean and it's the best producer.
No, it's not. The one we caught this spring produce more honey than that hive by twofold. And they're producing more bees, but they're not producing nearly the amount of honey. They're keeping the bee box.
A hive, if it's producing a lot of bees, is consuming a lot of honey. So they might be actually producing a lot of honey, but they're consuming it.
Maybe so, maybe so. They are producing a lot of bees, which, like you say, they do two things. They produce bees and they make honey.
We can take one particular queen and we can graft several hundred off of it and set 20 of them in a row. And there's going to be one out of that whole batch is going to be more exceptional. So it's just nature, you know?
Right. And I guess my point is if you find that exceptional one, you want to keep an eye on it and make sure that that's the one you're grafting from.
That's the one I wouldn't mark.
Well,
you know how many people who's marked the queen called me up in a panic? I painted the queen's eyes shut.
Ooh.
That would be awful.
Yes. Yes, I understand. I'm not trying to give anybody bad advice, Don.
You know, the hard knock school teaches a lot very fast. So if you want to mark them, I mean, I can see people in areas where there's Africanized bees that are getting their hives footprinted, so they have to, you know, mark them.
Good. Good boy.
Okay, well.
All right.
Thanks.
Okay, I'll let you, well, Miss Matt has something to say. We've got 3 other people there. We're already past time, I think. Go ahead, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. Let's see, PJ, where'd he go? Go ahead, PJ.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Hey, Don. Hey, I got a question. One of my hives was real strong at the end of May, and I opened it up first week of June. I was planning on doing a couple splits off of it. Well, I noticed there's no more queen activity. There's still cat brood, but there's no young larvae, no eggs. So I waited another week, opened it back up. Most brood is hatched. There was still nothing. So I put a right queen cell in, waited a couple weeks, opened it up. I don't know if she didn't make it back from her mating flight or what, but she never showed back up. Put another one in, and same thing. So 3 weeks ago, I put in one of my mated ones, and they accepted her. I opened it up, and I got back from vacation today. She's gone now. I cannot seem to keep a queen in that one single hive, and I don't understand.
You checking for mites?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I treat, and that's the only hive I have any problems with. I doubled the 40 so far, and I'm hoping to double one more time before winter. And that's the only hive I'm having issues, but I'm at the point now I'm kind of wasting queens where I could be using them somewhere else.
Why don't you pick the whole hive up and move it back 15, 20 foot on another stand and just put a queen cell between 2 frames? That's how we make lots of splits. Let them up your field bees hatch that queen out for you.
Well, I tried that twice.
And that didn't work?
No. No, and I don't understand it. It's the only hive I've had really puzzling me in the last couple of years. I just can't figure this one out.
Well, they got a mind of their own. I haven't figured them out yet.
But, I mean, the way their numbers are dropping now, I mean, it won't be long. There won't be a hive left. But I just know if you had an idea of what it could be where I could still save that one hive or just count my losses and move on from it.
I would try moving the hive, you know, even if you don't put a cell in that spot, you know, and that where your hive was. Sometimes you get a hive that just won't accept the cell. A lot of times, if you don't have a lot of nurse bees in there, they won't accept a cell. The field bees reject it.
And that could be the problem at this point.
What I would do, I would try putting, what we usually do is put a box or something in front of the hive, take a lid, turn it upside down, and have that lid even with your bottom board so that when you shake frames of bees right in front, they'll crawl right in. And what we do is, take 2 or 3 frames and shake them in there and then smoke them good when they hit that lid. Turn the lid upside down. That's going to put all your field bees back to that parent hive, and then your nurse bees will just crawl on in.
Okay.
Sometimes you get your nurse bees high enough to accept it. Same thing on grafting. I mean, you graft, you get 2, 3 good turns on it, and then about the 4th one, they just don't want to accept it. That's because the bees are worn out. They're just too old. You just have to recharge with a bunch of nurse bees every 2 to 3 weeks.
Right. Yeah, I tried my hand at grafting for the first time here a couple weeks ago, and it's a lot easier just to do it your way. You get a lot more queen cells your way and just cut them out. I found that to be true.
Yeah. I mean, I try to show everybody the easiest ways to do things, but if you're going to have 200 to 300 queens a week, then grafting, you know, it's a lot easier to go through your yard, pull out 100 queens, cage them, mark your boxes, and come back a half an hour later and drop 100 cells in, you know. So,
right.
You know, you have to weigh one thing against the other.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
All right, Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, just getting back to what Pat said before about knowing when your honey flow starts and when it ends, and that's why I asked you earlier, you know, when you plan on pulling your honey. But last year I pulled my honey in, I believe it was late August, and then used the fall flow for them to store up for winter. But that always worries me that they won't store up enough.
I pull honey once or twice a week, you know, a frame here and a frame there. I like to keep them to where they have to work. If you start stacking honey up and pull it once or twice a year, you don't produce as good a honey because it's all mixed together. If you pull it more by the bloom as they cap it, you can pull out a couple frames out of each box, extract it out, and put the empty frames back in or put a blank in there. They'll draw it down. I think you come out with a better honey, and by doing that, I think you end up getting more honey because they're just like people. When they got so much honey in there, they're not going to go out and work. When they have to replace their stores for winter, they're going to work harder.
Yeah, well, it's, you know, it's also, you know, Don, I started with all new equipment last year. This year I got a ton of equipment, and, you know, they still have to draw all of these frames out. So, I mean, that's taking a tremendous amount of work for them to do.
Are you feeding them good?
I feed them in the spring. I'm not feeding them through the flow.
Well, if you're trying to draw a comb out, they're not going to draw it if there ain't enough flow.
Yeah, I just don't want them to mix the sugar water with the nectar.
Well, you watch the video how I show you how to tell when a honey flow starts and stops during the day. Take a honey bear and just squeeze a little honey across the front. If there's a honey flow on, they'll walk right through it. If there's not, they'll line up and start eating.
Yeah, I remember that, actually, now that you mentioned that. All right, thanks, Tom.
Okay.
All right, last up is Pat. Go ahead, Pat.
Yeah, it's me again. Well, for Matt, first of all, you and your wife need to sit closer together because I can see your ear and her nose, but sit a little closer together.
Hey, Pat, take your finger off the camera.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, my table's full of the stuff out of my cabinet, so my iPad is on my lap, and I'm.
That was her beer bottle.
It was. But the other thing for that is, I mark my queens. I'm sorry, Don, I can't find them. My vision isn't that good anymore. But practice with drones, and I mark them on the frame. I don't clip them and cage them and all that other junk. I take my marker and I just put a tiny dab on them so I can find them. But please do not clip the wings on your queens. That is horrible. First of all, you're keeping these poor little bugs in a box, and now you're going to cut one leg off or one wing off. You know, you got to have a little bit of respect for the bugs. Don't clip their wings. And that's just mine. That's worth 2 cents. And for PJ, you said you had that one box that you couldn't get a queen to live in, and that you were doing mite treatments on a regular basis and all that. You might want to consider that if you're doing a mite treatment while the queen is at a certain stage, you may be killing your queen without realizing what you're doing, because that oxalic acid is poison. It kills mites. And so if your queen's not at the right stage, you may kill her. And a lot of times they tell you on the instructions for some of the other chemicals that it will kill your queens. So be careful. So that's something to consider, is what is your timing, or maybe don't treat until you get a queen established in there. Give her a few weeks to be laying good. I think it might have something to do with your treatment timing anyway. I think that was it. That was it. Yep. And I wasn't picking on you, Matt. Just don't cut her wings off.
If you're breeding stock, that's I think, but you're right. Whatever.
You can get the little wheel, and you can get the little thing that keeps it so that she can't exit. You can make her not able to leave the box by physically making something on the box without cutting her wings off, is what I'm trying to say. There are different ways to do that without, affecting her. You're lucky that they haven't killed her. So that's just something to consider, just my 2 cents worth. And you can dishearten the hive by giving them too much to overcome. And if they don't like the queen because she's crippled, it could have the end outcome, but that's just me. That's all. Good night.
All right, then that is a wrap for tonight. You got anything else for us, Don?
No, I hear the fireworks are still going off.
Uh-oh.
It's shaking.
You better go out and watch them then. All right, well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Don. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
We won't have bee withdrawal next 2 weeks.
No, we will not.
Appreciate everybody showing up. Thanks for showing up.
Night, all.
Good night, everyone.